Hello and welcome to All Indians Matter. I'm Ashraf Engineer. A 2020 report by humanitarian organization INSIMA estimated that there were 31 million orphans in India, but only 50,000 were eligible for adoption. The problem seems to be compounding with the Central Adoption Resource Authority or CARA saying the number of children adopted in India declined from 5,693 in 2010 to 3,142 in 2020-21 and only 2,991 in 2021-22. Adopting a child in India can be a complicated, tedious, and frustrating process with complex legal procedures and numerous technicalities. It can also be emotionally taxing. Some estimates say it can take almost 3 years to legally adopt a child. Why is adoption such a tangled process in India, and how can it be made easier while ensuring adequate safeguards for the children concerned?
All Indians matter.
We have on the show two guests. First, Bharati Dasgupta, co-founder and emeritus trustee of Catalyst for Social Action or CSA, a not-for-profit established in 2002. CSA works in the area of adoption and care of children in childcare institutions and engages with more than 5,000 children across 100 childcare homes in 4 states. She was managing trustee of CSA between 2002 and 2012. Welcome, Bharti ji.
Hi, Ashraf. Good to be here.
We have also Vidyadhar Prabhudesai, an entrepreneur and behavior change advocate. Vidya is someone I've worked with for many years in his capacity as co-founder of LeadCap Ventures, a global research and consulting firm. He is an adoptive parent and co-founder of the Adopt India movement, which works to improve the plight of children who are orphaned or abandoned by bringing them into the mainstream adoption channel, sensitizing people and encouraging child adoption as a family planning alternative. Welcome, Vidya.
Hi, sir. Thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful podcast, and I hope to have a very good discussion around the issue of child adoption in India.
I'm sure we will. Bhartiji, according to Kara, there are more than 30,000 prospective parents waiting to adopt, but only 2,131 children are legally free for adoption. And around two-thirds of them are children with special needs. And it takes 3 years for an adoption process to complete. Why do we have this mismatch?
Ashraf, I think a little bit of the answer is in the question itself. If you look at the large number of parents who are waiting to find children to adopt, and if you look at the number of adoptees, the adoptable children who are available, this population of 30,000 itself will take you 10 years to service. So, first of all, there's a huge mismatch between what is available for adoption, the children who are available for adoption, and what is the requirement for adoption. So, I think at some point of time, it would be worthwhile to close the registrations, maybe, pause the registrations, maybe, and take a look and see how you can service these 30,000 waiting parents and in what kind of time. That's one. When you look at the other reasons for the delays, there are okay, it takes so few and so many on one hand and so few on the others. You must remember that the children who come into the adoption stream are generally very few in India. In India, it's not easy to give up a child. Nobody wants to give up a child, no matter how difficult the circumstances in which she is brought up. Those who give up or those who abandon are those who are forced by societal norms. A child outside wedlock, acute abuse in the family, maybe intense poverty, maybe society pressures, all kinds of things. Those are the children who come into adoption. So those numbers are very few. And in India, we have the joint family system where, automatically a little child gets taken care of, particularly the 0 to 6 years age group. That child gets taken care of irrespective of the consequences. People don't consider the after effects of bringing a child home. The child is in need, so I just bring her home. And that's a typical Indian attitude. So that's one. Second thing is, if you see, that there are a large number of children in orphanages, as they say, but really the children in orphanages are not all adoptable. And in fact, most of them are not adoptable. First of all, I just need to make a point here, and that is children in orphanages are not necessarily orphans. Many of them have parental care. It's just that it's not sufficient, and and therefore the children are left in the institution. You find some children who are from the transitional workers, the migratory workers. They leave their children, and sometimes they don't ever come back. So things like that, there are several reasons which account for the lack of children. The other, of course, is that they're not the lack of awareness. People don't know that there is an event, that is, that there is an adoption alternative which which a parent in difficulty can seek recourse to. There are Anganwadi workers, there are healthcare workers who have been trained, but I just think it's just not sufficient. And I don't think we ever want to promote adoption. We don't want to, adoption in the sense, promote giving up the child. That because for us, those in the adoption community, and I'm sure Vidyadhar will agree with me here, we do not want a child to be brought up outside her family. It's only when circumstances don't allow her to survive within the family that we want the child to be adopted. So this is one more reason that they don't know about the existence. Then again, there are several smaller things like linking up an adoption agency to all the childcare homes around that agency. These are procedural matters which need to be looked into so that if there is any child in any of the childcare homes who is eligible for adoption, she should come into the adoption stream. Okay, so these are the general reasons why there are less children. With regard to your other part of your question, the delays. Now again, the delays are there are procedural delays sometimes. But I really don't know. I'm a little dated on this. Vidyadhar will be able to tell me how bad the scene is now. But the delays are again, for example, if you see a child is relinquished, that mother has to be given another waiting time to think over her decision. Okay, so that's a waiting time. Then the child who is lost and found, the police report is a must. And invariably, if you find a child, he is not even able to speak the language which others understand. To find someone who understands his language, find someone who can write a police report, let the police do a thorough investigation, then it goes to the Child Welfare Committee. All of this put together leads to add-ons, days that are getting added on from the day the child has entered the agency. Then there are procedural delays. The Child Welfare Committee, maybe one member is not available, so it's called off and it's postponed. Maybe the social worker is not available. Maybe the availability of relinquished parent being there. So the whole process from a child being declared legally free for adoption to the home study, to the child being allocated, to the medical examination of the child, to the child going under foster care, and then the court process, and then the court order, and the birth certificate, and the passport. It's all procedural matters. Not that it can't be improved, it can be improved, but if somebody has to study it bit by bit and make the changes bit by bit, you cannot change the whole system at one time.
Vidya, last August, the Supreme Court urged a streamlining of the adoption process. It said, and I quote, "Can you imagine a 3 to 4 years period to adopt a child in India? It should be made simpler. There are thousands of orphan children waiting to be adopted." Stop quote. What was your experience like?
My personal experience in the journey of adoption was the same. I had to wait for about 3.5 years to have the foster care of my child. So when we registered back in 2018, the foster care was completed in 2021, and the adoption order was given in 2022. So almost 3.5 to 4 years of process still took that much time. So yes, there are delays and there is a long waiting years to be done on from the parent side. There are several reasons, as Bhartiji also explained, that there are procedural delays, there are delays in getting terms of the NOCs required and other legal stuff to be brought up before the child is declared legally free for getting adopted. Which is why there's on one side there are delays. There are delays also because there are complications even at the parental side also. Some of the things, parents, if they are completed with their home study report, due to the delays part of it in the waiting period time, their home study report gets outdated and they have to get it redone after 3 years are done. So which is also one of the reasons why sometimes due to the legal process itself is like that, it takes that much time to get it cleared. So, but to be very frank, you need to look at it from a different angle altogether. I consider this waiting period as a uh, at a time where I could learn more about child upbringing, learn more about how we can take care of the child when the child is home. What are the other necessities to be taken care of in terms of care given to be the child? If there are any medical emergencies happen at during by bringing up the child, those kind of things to be taken care of. All these positive things to be taken care of by the parent tool during that waiting period of time. Plus they should keep them themselves updated in terms of what is happening in the the adoption pedigree itself, wherein which states or which locations the children are getting adopted faster and which states are completely slower. So in my process I always kept up myself updated with the stats which are happening around, and kept my application getting updated in terms of revising the states from where I should get my child from, and other personal things which are involved over here. So this is these delays are normally happened when you are looking for a child which is a healthy child. But there are cases where children are not healthy, or they have certain complication. It could be a smaller complication in terms of a disability, or it could be anything in terms of impaired or any amputing or anything like that. So these special cases, or even the cases where you have siblings or three children to be given for adoption. In these specific cases, there is no waiting period at all, and you can adopt directly, and that can be done within about less than a 6 months time also. So it all depends on the parental choices also, what kind of child they are looking at, and what is their readiness also in terms of getting a child home.
Bhatiji, some of the problems identified are lack of information, transparency, and uncertainty around referrals. Could you elaborate on this a bit?
Okay, one of the single most negative things that have happened after CARA has centralized the whole thing, or government has centralized the whole thing, is that very personal touch between the adopting family and the childcare, the adopting agency and the child, which used to be there on a one-on-one basis, is completely gone. So there was a time when the parents would identify the child from the organization itself, would get to know the child, would get to know the social workers, would come and mingle with the child, and therefore they knew much more about the child, could see the child's health records, could see how the child is functioning, and a lot of other things which could happen on a one-to-one basis when they could interact directly with the social worker or with the adoption agency. Now, with this having gone, it's become a purely mechanical process where it's like a mix and match. You get the child, you match, then you go ahead and you make the decision that okay, this child is good enough for me. So that itself, I think, is one of the largest single factors which fits into this category. The other is the uncertainty, yes, because you know very often once the child is identified, then you have to know a little bit about the child. You have to look at you're allowed to look at the medical history of the child. A child file is created the day the child enters the adoption agency. So the parent is allowed to look at the file. The parent is allowed to look at the medical history, to interact with the child to an extent, not too much, but to small extent she can interact, and then to make a call. Now, to making a call for a parent, most parents say, Vidyadhar would bear me out, most parents say that there is a kind of a magic bonding which happens when they see the child. I have not experienced adoption because I'm not an adoptive parent. But my daughter also said that when you see the child, then you know that this is the child for me. But this does not happen in the mechanized, highly mechanized system which is there. Transparency also, I think, about the child. If you are asking, you are not allowed to part with information which is the history of the child, where she has come from, what kind of what the parent will of course share it with the adoption agency. The adoption agency might know, but the adoption agency is not allowed to part with that kind of information. Okay, so there is some inbuilt lack of transparency in the system itself. So these are there. These are negative features, and one of the many negative features which are there. And yes, I quite agree that there is this is an issue that could be addressed. It needs to be addressed.
Right, Vidya, given the procedural issues and other things that we've spoken about, Does this take a sort of a mental and emotional toll on prospective parents?
See, I believe that any parent who's looking to adopt a child needs to be mentally stable at that stage itself before the person decides even to adopt. So, because as I'll take from my example itself, I wasn't aware of the complete process and the time that it would take for us to get the child in hand. It is the agency who had conducted the home study report for us. The counselors over there have educated us in the process, given us a complete overview of what is going to happen. Once the HSR is done and how much time it's going to take and what all things to be done between that time, which actually helped us to be calm, be patient, and that's when we started exploring to learn about parenting as on a different altogether. And this experience uh, is as good as experiencing you having a biological child. Yes, for some parents, they may think that waiting 3 years or 4 years time is kind of a toll on their mental side, because yes, they keep waiting for it, and at the end of the day, sometimes some of the parents even do drop off from the list because they do not want to continue further. There are further challenges also when it comes to this waiting period. For example, your composite age may change. You are right now under 80, 85 years old as a couple, but if you're taking about 3 to 4 years for adoption, you might cross the slab, and then probably the child that you are looking for may not be you may not be eligible to get that kind of a age of child group. So which is where sometimes parents do panic in terms of they are not getting the child from their age group what they have preferred for. These are the complications which are there. Plus, they get approached by many other organizations that yes, there is a child available. Do you want to adopt? And I have personally got many messages and calls to do that. And I would advise people not to fall in these kind of traps, because you never know, where these would end up you trouble. You this would be putting you in trouble for in the longer term in future. So which is why I say, you should be very calm. You should keep yourself composed in terms of parenting as such.
Vidya, could you briefly walk us through the entire process?
Okay. The adoption process as such, I would say there are about 4 or 5 steps. Okay, the first step is getting yourself registered on the Kara, which is a centralized agency right now. So once you register yourself, fill in the details, and they would ask you for certain additional documentation to be provided, which are very basic documentation in terms of your address proof, your income proofs, your employment proofs, and other things. Your date of birth, your marriage certificate if you are applying as a couple, if you are a single parent or a divorcee, then other certificates to be given accordingly. All those things, documentation, and plus according also they ask us to give you the recent medical report and certificate from a medical practitioner. So that helps you certify you that you are not having any diseases which can result to death in future. So these documentations, once you complete, your first step of registration is completed. And then after that is done, within 2 months time frame, you need to complete the home study report. So at the time of application itself, you are asked you to select any agency which is nearby who could come and conduct the home study report for you. So that once you select, the agency would contact you and they will do the home study report. So home study report is the second step over here. At what happens in the home study report is that the agency will come to you. They will visit your home. They will check your surroundings. They'll talk to your parents if the parents are living with you, or they will talk to neighbors who are living around you and try to get general information about you. They may or may get in touch with your employers if they wish to do it, and verify about the employment and other things, so that they at the end they are sure that this family is genuine, and there is a surety that if the child is put over here, there is no threat to the child as such. One of the things that they do verify is with the local police is that there shouldn't be any cases, FIRs, anything with perspective of child crime against the parent, either in as a capacity of couple or individually also. So that if they find that, then you are completely rejected from the process, and you will never be allowed to apply for adoption in future. Once that HSR is completed, they generally do the report in about a month's time, and they upload that on the Kara website again, which you have also access to the home study report, what has been the findings. Then after that is done, you are actually the waitlist period starts. So from that time onwards, you can see your seniority in the preferential states or districts which you have selected, where your position is and how many children are available. It is at that time, you have a choice to change your district so that you can check out what seniority it is. There are certain states where the seniority and weighting is higher, where certain states where the weighting is lower. So parents take a decision based on the seniority ranking, and then they prefer to change the state if they want to state it. Then once, but there is also a condition over there that once you change the state, you cannot change it out every 6 months. So that there is a locking period over there. So once that is done, if you change once, then after 6 months you cannot change it. So then the game continues as it is. And for me, I have myself changed couple of times states based on the availability of children, and then we took the decision to change the states. And then after a couple of years time, we got a first notification where the child is allotted. So that's a referral process, the third step in the entire process as such. So once the referral is done, you will get the details of the child, the medical history of the child, and what is the current state of the child. All those details you will get it. And then after the referral process is done, you're supposed to complete the foster care process with the agency who has referred the child back to you. So foster care is the fourth step in the process as such. So once the foster care is done, the child can come back to you. And during the foster care process itself, they would ask you for the same documentation which you have uploaded during the Kara application itself. The reason they ask is that 2 3 years have passed on. They want to check and verify again what has changed in the family structure, what has changed in the employment, what has changed in the person as such. Again, this is again verified along with the updated documents of the foster care. They also ask you recommendations from known people. They not necessarily be your blood relatives or your first relatives as such, but you need to refer a third party person who would recommend you, or you put forward a word about you, positive reviews about you, and they ask for that recommendation letters. Along with the recommendation, they also ask for an undertaking. So what happens if to the couple, if due to if there is unforeseen event happens like a death or anything like that, who's going to take care of the child after the couple is not there? So they take an undertaking from any relative, preferably within the family. If not within the family, then a very close knitted first level relatives or anybody like that can give that undertaking. So once these things are done, the documentation process is complete. You go to the agency where the child is there. See the child. Just spend the time with the child. Simultaneously, the CWC team of that state will come and talk to you about and your the process, and they explain you what is to be done. And then they would give authority and approve the foster care process as well. And then the agreement is signed between the agency and the adopting parents, and that's about it. Earlier, this agreement used to go to court and for signing up. But right now, since the new regulations have come in, the involvement of courts is completely dropped off. The district magistrates are allowed to take the decision for foster care and even for the final adoption category. So this is done at the district magistrate level itself. From the foster care is done, you take the child back to your home, and that's when your parenting starts. Meanwhile, the agency where the child is there files an adoption petition with the district magistrate again, which is to be done within a month's time after the foster care is done. That petition talks about that if I am taking the child on as a parent, and I'll continue to be the legal parent of the child and all those things. So that is done, and then the entire process of the final stage of adoption takes place once that petition is approved by the district magistrate, and you get the adoption orders post that. So this is a 4 5 steps involved in the entire process, and even after the adoptions are done and foster care is done, there's one more step which is a follow up steps. So during follow ups, also what happens is that the the agency which have done your home study report, they would visit you and look at what is happening to the child and is the proper care is given to the child or not. So they do come to your place every 6 months for a period of 2 years, and that's the verification done as follow up as a part of process. So these are the 6 7 steps in which the entire adoption is currently structured upon.
Bhartiji, there's also the problem of social and other prejudices. For instance, there is a bias against physically challenged orphans, and there are many of them, as you said. And there's often, I read, a caste bias at work too, where parents actually ask for the caste of the child before saying yes, we will adopt or not adopt. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there are some. Okay, first of all, in our country, as even normal parents find it difficult to bring up children who are differently able. Because whether it be a blind child, whether it be someone who's hearing impaired or who is disabled, unable to walk or things like that, there are hardly any facilities specially for them. They have to mingle along with the rest of the community, and the rest of the community does not always accept them. That's a part of a disgraceful aspect of our society, which continues even today. Okay, so in itself, bringing up differently able children is difficult. So when an adoptive parent comes and picks up differently able children, sometimes it so happens that they don't know what the implications are, and in some cases, of course, they know what they are, and they make a conscious decision that, notwithstanding the circumstances, we will this child is our own. Okay, so this happens, and this is mainly because of the circumstances. And of course, unlike other countries, there is hardly any help from the state as far as bringing up differently able children is concerned, whether adopted or even your normal biological child. So that's definitely one of the prejudices. Second one is that in this adoption system, what happens is that because you want a smaller child, because you want a child meeting your specifications, and that child is not available, and the waiting time is so long, sometimes parents are inclined to accept a differently able child without understanding the circumstances. So that's again a wrong decision. Some cases it goes right, some cases it does not go right. But that's again something. So generally, I would say that there is not a huge inclination to adopt children who are differently able. But I think situation is much more different now. When we were working on adoption 10 years ago, it was completely. I mean, there were no takers for this community. Right now, I think many parents do opt for children who are differently able. That's one. Second thing is that caste. This is a little surprising, because children who are abandoned, children who are relinquished. Maybe you may know the caste is, but it's a lost and found child, an abandoned child. There's no way of knowing, and there is no. This information is, I don't think, to be asked or to be provided by the agency. You're not supposed to reveal the past of the child, and if someone asks for a caste, I think that's a wrong practice. And if someone is giving that information, it's even more wrong practice. So that is not to be encouraged. Vidyadhar can tell you if things are different now, where the caste asking for caste is common. When we did adoptions, we didn't face any such features. Okay, so that was the second thing. So these are the two things. There are prejudices. And overall, because of the lack of children, because children in childcare homes are not available, because non-registered agencies are not within this framework. There are many non-registered childcare homes where there are children, maybe adoptable children, but they're not within this whole framework. So that poses a problem. And yes, you're right. I mean, there are these things which exist. They're not welcome at all and need to be handled.
Bhartiji, let's talk about childcare institutions for a second. Now, there has been some debate about lack of training of childcare workers. How bad is the situation, and how does that affect the children over the long term?
Childcare workers, from whatever I have seen, whether it is in adoption or in childcare homes, In adoption, they are mostly what we would term as the caretakers, whom sometimes we use as domestic help in our own homes. I don't think there's any specific qualifications for childcare workers in adoption agencies or in any childcare home. So they are the natural mothers, the woman's instinct to be a mother. That's what comes in, and that's what is this thing. And from my experience, that works well. However, there is training and there are different kinds of training. A person, a child living through life and day after day she's getting on with life, that's one thing. But training her to be an acceptable member of society, to be a contributing member of society, to be a success in life, to look at different things in different ways, those are some things which a childcare worker, it's very difficult for a childcare worker. I don't think the agencies are reasonably staffed to do so. And I'm not aware of any training that they receive. Again, a little dated on this. Vidyadhar can probably give you more up to date information. But no, it does not. To my mind, whatever I have seen, and I have visited multiple childcare homes, though quite some time back, the children are happy. I have not come across, except one or two cases, maybe I have not come across children who look unhappy or who, do not respect the person concerned. Though, of course, there are stories about huge kind of, happenings, negative happenings in childcare homes. But I personally have not come across any of them. And whatever I have seen in childcare homes, and I've seen many in the 4 states, I've visited almost every home in the 4 states that we work with. And I have seen that the children are generally happy. But no, I would not at all attempt even to say that they are brought up as a child in a home should or could be brought up. No, that's just not it. And training, I don't think there's any formal training, at least not now.
Sure. Vidya, I read that lack of data around orphans is a challenge. What exactly does that mean?
Okay, so there is no official government data in terms of how many orphans or abandoned children exist in India. There is an estimate which is running since 2018-19 by the UN agencies that there are about 29.6 million orphan abandoned children in India. But that's just a rough estimate. There's no accurate accuracy to put to that, and we are actually running on that benchmark itself. That yes, there are 3 crore of orphans there in India, but it actually started when somebody put a PIL that there's no accurate data available, and then after the new regulation has come in, they have instructed all the CWC and district child protection units to do survey in a specific district to figure out how many orphans are there, and that. Collection, I believe that it's ongoing currently, and no official numbers are put out as such. So yes, yes, there's no actual official government data available with the number of orphans who, but yes, we are running on an estimate of 3 crore orphans in India.
Vidya, there is also the matter of adoption by same-sex couples. Now, the government was against legalization of same-sex relationships and seems to be against adoption by same-sex couples.
Yeah.
It says the arrangement is unworkable and that there's a long list of heterosexual couples waiting. What's your view?
Okay, my personal view is well, it actually depends on what the final outcome comes in from the Supreme Court in terms of legalization of same sex and acceptance of the same gender marriages in India. Because your adoption is again tied to your marriage or things like that. So. If you are, let's say, two women who are married, and you adopt you are still able to adopt a boy or a male child, but when it comes to two male people adopting a child, they will not be able to adopt a girl child at all. While in the case, if it's a normal marriage within a man and a woman, they can adopt a male child or a female child. So that's where that gender balance gets disturbed, which is why there is inertia in terms of giving children for the same sex marriages or with the LGBTIQ community itself. Being a member of community as a single parent. But if you are a male, then you cannot adopt a girl child. But if you're a female, you can adopt of gender of any child.
Yeah, that's the legal status. That's the legal view. My point is, what's your view? I mean, do you think same-sex couples should be allowed to adopt?
I Probably, I would say that if it's helping the children to get adopted faster, I would say that let them give a chance to have adoption, for making it easy for them as well. It's all in the interest of children. If our laws for all, in the adoption or anything like that, is all made based on the safety, the rights of the child. So all the laws that you see, and which is probably one of the reasons also that there are delays in adoption, because all our laws or processes are done in a such a way that the safety and the security of the child is utmost priority compared to anything else over here.
Vidya, what about the laws governing adoption? Or there is no general law of adoption, which is instead regulated by personal laws of the community in question. So we have the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, the Guardians and Wards Act, and the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act. What do these laws mean for different communities?
So these three acts are there existing. Currently, what the adoption which are happening through Kara, they are all happening through Juvenile Justice Act. Okay, that is applicable. Act is applicable to any children, because that act does not discriminate in terms of the community, where the child is coming from, all the things related to that. And even if you see the current process which is followed under JJ Act, they do not declare the religion or the community on the application form of the child. So, which is why it is very neutral in terms of community or which religion that person, the child, belongs to. Second, what happens in Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act is are adoptions which are mostly within the family, and Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act is applicable to Hindus, Jains, Sikhs, and Buddhists. Yeah, so these four communities can adopt under Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, but that again is within the family itself. Okay, the Guardians and Wardens Act is applicable to all other communities which are not covered by Hama or as such. But again, Guardians and Wardens Act doesn't give you a parental right as such. You are a guardian of the child until the child turns 18 years of age.
Absolutely, I think that's a very critical distinction. And as you said, the Guardians and Wards Act actually doesn't make you legal parents in the strictest sense. Whereas, going the other way, which is through the Juvenile Justice Act, it actually is a far better route. I'm glad you brought up that distinction, Vidya.
Yeah. Also, one more thing I wanted to add now. Right now, there's a talk about the Uniform Civil Code. Okay, and there is a discussion that Uniform Civil Code needs to be brought in, because this addresses the adoption in a better way, far beyond the religion and other personal laws which are existing. I believe that probably if that comes in, maybe the processes would get further streamlined, and the process would get faster compared to going through uh, uh, juvenile justice or anything else. The reason also uniform civil code is important is that if your adoption is done under JJ Act, some of the recent cases have happened that people have challenged the adoption done under the juvenile justice act, and under the personal laws of certain tribal communities or any other communities, and the decision have gone in the favor of the biological parent who had abandoned the child in the first place. So, which is why act like a uniform civil code probably could help and protect the parents who are adopting a child completely, rather than somebody coming and challenging the adoption process later when the child is with them and they saying that they want the child back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as far as the Uniform Civil Code is concerned, it deals with many things, and adoption is just one aspect of it. And there are many controversial areas and problematic areas, but that's a different debate. I understand what you're saying purely in the context of adoption. And Bhartiji, between 2017 and 2019, Kara faced an upsurge in adoptive parents returning children after adoption. Now, nearly 60% of the children returned were girls, 24% were children with special needs, and many were older than 6 years of age. The primary reason was that disabled children and older children took much longer to adjust to their adoptive families. Childcare institutions simply do not prepare the children to live with a new family. Now, moreover, children with special needs are not treated with compassion or empathy in foster homes. What is the way out?
Us. Ashraf, can I ask a counter question?
Absolutely.
You
Anything
sub
that you like.
Okay. Now, see what I want to pick up from what you have asked is that childcare institutions simply do not prepare their the children for family like life. Okay, that's the point that came in. The childcare institutions do not train the child how to live in a family, and these are with the older children particularly. Vidyadhar, do you subscribe to that idea that childcare institutions should train the children to live in a family or can train the children to live in a family?
Uh, Bharati, I don't think so. Child care institutions have that kind of capacity and staff to handle the children and train the children in that way, because they are already understaffed and underfunded also. Which is why it is very difficult for any childcare institution to make that child ready for home. It is actually the parents' responsibility to take care of the child, whichever age group that child comes from. It is a parent's responsibility to get understand and make the child adjust to within the new family which they are getting the child. It is the parental probably needs to be trained enough or counseled enough to how exactly to bring up the child if the child is of probably about 5 or 6 years of old, because the child knows that you are not they are not the biological parents, or he may not even get to see their biological parents in future. So which is why counseling of parents is more important compared to the counseling of a child.
Okay, now let Ashraf. I'm going to give you one or two stories if you don't
Absolutely.
mind.
We love stories on this
Okay,
podcast.
so let me tell you that when I first got acquainted to adoption, it was with the adoption of my granddaughter. She was 5 months old. When I held her in my arms, I felt her cling to me. So I asked the social worker there, I said, why is she clinging to me? So the worker said, she's sensing your body warmth. The realization hit me then that the little child body warmth is a need which who fulfills that body warmth need? Okay, that's number one. Number two, there was an instance when I'll give you a few examples from my own experience. There was again my visit to this adoption agency. There were about 10 babies in the cradles, all of them fed and all that, all sleeping. I saw only one child who has eyes wide open. So normally, like you see when you meet a child, you start cooing and you make funny noises. I tried that, no response. I tried again, no response. I tried a third time, no response. And then suddenly there was a mad frenzy, throwing up her arms, gurgling, making sounds. I stayed with her till she fell asleep. But how many childcare workers can do that when they are in the institution? Okay. Third example, I had an adoptive parent coming home with her adopted child. She was very happy with everything else. Child was beautiful. She was about 3 years old, 3.5 years old. Suddenly the child was not in our midst. So we said that, okay, where is she? So the mother said that, Auntie, just look at your bedroom and see if there is a mirror. If there's a mirror, wherever there's a mirror, you'll find her. And right enough, she was in front of the mirror. So we laughed at her until she thinks she's a beauty queen and etc. etc. But after they left, I thought, have I ever seen a full length mirror in any childcare home? So, where does this self esteem begin? If I'm not able to know who I am, where does the self esteem begin? There are innumerable instances like this. Those of you who have visited a childcare home, you take food with you. What happens? They all line up in a queue. Does that happen in the family? No. Do you hand over the food to your child or do you offer it to her and the child picks it up? So these are things which nobody can train except the parents. So asking somebody to take on this responsibility is, to my mind, absurd. This is the parental responsibility the parents have to do, but the parents have to have that frame of mind. They should be mentally prepared to know that this child has gone through two separations. One when she's separated from her birth parents, and second time when she's separating from the agency. This is a child which is now 6 years old and has formed her own mind. This is a child that does not have the genes that I have had it been my family. So I have to temper my expectations to meet what I am taking on. This is a challenge for me. I have asked for it. I want to do it, and I have to do the best. And this no childcare institution can ever offer, no matter how well trained they are. Yes, of course, they can few things they can do, But a small little instance like I had taken a bag of with two employees of where I was working. I'd taken a sack full of toys, and these two boys, they just emptied it on the floor, and the children were all nicely disciplined manner sitting on the cradles or outside. There was like they went mad, berserk when they saw those toys. They just jumped helter skelter over each other and they picked up the toys. So these are small joys which they never, ever, ever get. So be prepared. So no, no, do not expect this of the childcare home. The childcare home sees that the child is healthy and taken care of and is lively, and the rest is left to you, the family, the parent. And that's why I said I'm a little amused with this question. And no, no, definitely not. No expectation from the agency to help the child to live in a family. No.
Right. Bharji, first of all, thanks for sharing your own personal family experience. Uh, Having gone through that and having observed so many adoptions and having worked in the space, why do we as a society need to firmly back adoption?
We do, Ashok, things are much better today than they were even when we started. I remember facing a question saying that if you had to choose a child, why not choose a very pretty child? Those are the kind of questions that we faced at one time. Today, an adopted child is accepted. She is accepted by the school, she is accepted by family, by friends. And so that is a long distance that we have covered. And yet, it is still a little different. Today, when a child, an adopted child, sits in the midst of 10 people and says, Mala don don aayi ahe. I don't know if you understand Marathi, but she says, Mala don don aayi ahe. I have a birth mother and I have an adoption mother. People are still shocked. Now, why should it be? It's a normal thing. She has a birth mother and she has a right to know she has a birth mother. So don't feel shocked. So little things like this, the acceptance level has definitely gone up, but certainly not to the desired level. Definitely not to the desired level. Also, in our community, there is this question of marriage. And at that stage, it becomes important to explain that the child is adopted, the question of caste, the question of family, etc., etc., all of it come in. Particularly for a girl child, I think that is a little bit of a disadvantage, and it still continues even today. So yes, adoption needs to be much more accepted. I think we from the adoption community need to work much more. The parents, these 30,000 parents who are waiting with Kara, I don't think they've ever got together on a common platform even to discuss. Vidyadhar is doing something. He's trying to get parents to discuss and to get issues out. But those issues have to be taken forward. Small little issues, but take them forward instead of looking at the problem as a whole. But long way to go.
I'll come to Vidya's efforts in just a second. But before that, Bhartiji, I must ask you, tell us a little bit about the work done by CSA.
Okay, now CSA, I was see we started CSA in 2002. Okay, and this was entirely a family thing because my daughter had adopted, and that's how we learned about adoption, and that's how we said that something needs to be done, and we started this. So for 10 years, I was the managing trustee, and during those 10 years, we moved into 4 states and to a lot of adoption agencies. And we got into two things. One is, of course, rural adoptions was entirely we introduced rural adoptions in Maharashtra, so to say, because there were children in rural agencies who were not getting adopted because people didn't know they existed. So our first attempt was to go to Latur and Udgir and Nanded, and there were about 30 odd children who we could place immediately because city parents went there. So that adoption journey, apart from finding homes for the children, we found that there was tremendous scope for making changes, policy and procedural changes. So those days the children could not be transferred from one adoption agency to another. Even if there was a parent in another agency, because the child was in A agency, she could not be adopted. Second thing is older children were not accepted beyond 6 years. It was not. So we pushed all those with the government of Maharashtra. Children from childcare homes, we pushed it, and we got the government Maharashtra only to amend those rules. So likewise, and at that time we had an excellent bureaucrat sitting in the commissioner's office. His name was, I think, Ashwini Kumar, if I'm not mistaken. He was very receptive to all that we said, and he made several procedural and policy changes at the Maharashtra government level. and then we tried to push it at the Kara level. So we won an award because of that. We won the Rockefeller Award for the best NGO in the Western region for work on adoption. Then we were offered the adoption coordinating agency. We were offered to take charge of the adoption coordinating agency. Unfortunately, Kara took over shortly after that. And that whole journey of going into rural India, into going to Orissa and places like Kalahandi, where you see poverty at its extreme, and in Kalahandi, the first time I saw, there was one tribal man who had put a cradle outside his house. That was the first beginning, I think, of the cradle arrangement in adoption agencies. It was a practice afterwards introduced as a part of adoption, but his was the first time I had seen that he had put a cradle. Why? Because he had first, when he started work, he had found a child abandoned at his doorstep. They said if they're leaving children and instead of a dog getting to the child might as well be in the cradle. And he's a tribal, mind you, uneducated, absolutely no earning, nothing. So those were things, and we went into remote places. Kalahandi was an eye opener for us. Um, and we went into Madhya Pradesh, and then we went into Goa. And adoption was simply a fabulous journey for us. We really enjoyed. Of course, then we moved into childcare homes because when Kara took over, there was not much to be done. We still promote adoptions. We do hand holding, but not direct adoptions. We don't have any role to play. But I still get inquiries from people. I don't know how they find me, but they do find me. And now, of course, I'm on another thing. I deal with older children. I have started another NGO, and that is with older children. So that's a different thing altogether. But adoption was absolutely blissful.
Vidya, tell us about the Adopt India movement which you started.
Okay. Uh, Adopt India movement. I took an inspiration from a movement which is already, which probably changed one social issue, which was on organ trafficking. Okay, there's an organization called Organ India, which created the movement of Organ India. What it did in terms of the perception change um, for donating organs, and they heavily promoted the cause to people through media, through celebrity endorsements, and all those things. They promoted very heavily and tried to create a organic demand or organic supply of organs, which can be tracked, which can be accounted for, rather than illegal or trafficking of organs. The whole idea of the Adopt India is actually based on how Organ India changed the perception of people towards donating of organs. So the organ sorry, Adopt India is very similar on that front. We are working on two fronts as such. One, so we are looking at creating a dialogue at a national level on why and what policies and processes to be changed within the system itself, so that it gets onto a faster mode. There are several challenges to tackle at a processor level, even as remote as or as low as a police station itself, for not getting the NOCs for the child, or making sure that the child is legally free to adopt at the shortest possible time. So smaller things. So we are trying to figure out ways to plug into the system and improve the system. Probably use of a technology like a blockchain, which can come into this place and try uh, to streamline the process, which is currently running up in silos. There are several tools already in place. For example, there's a system which is called a Koya Paya, which is under the National Child Protection Wing, which is again a part of Ministry of Women and Child Development in India. So that tracks about the missing children and trying to figure out where exactly the child is, and try to figure out whereabouts of the child when it gets reported. So similar kind of a tracking system to be done and implemented for child which are under orphanages or childcare institutions, so that those can be tracked out, and faster clearance can be done through the uses of technology. So that is one part over here. The second part, what we are doing also, is in terms of educating and creating sensitization among the parents who want to look at adoption as such. So Our objective is to place adoption as one of the family planning alternatives. What happens is that when you look out, are married and you're looking out for family planning, you look at first is about the biological conception over here. If that doesn't work out, you look out for other options like a surrogacy, or you look at IVF procedures as such, and then possibly they may think of adopting as such, but uh, that is not yet even in the consideration list. So we would like to make that or change that positioning of adoption as a planning alternative. So the whole way of adoption is not should be with the Ministry of probably Child Women and Child Development. It should be with the Ministry of Family Planning itself, and only then probably things might change, because the whole perception shifts from just a child development or child protection organization to a family planning organization. So that is another way, in a way in which we are pushing to make sure that there is a bit of awareness, there's a bit of sensitization.
So, Bhartiji and Vidya, here's a question I ask all my guests at the end of the show. Why do you do this work? Bhartiji, why don't you go first?
Whew, why do I do this work? Okay. Uh, okay. I think if you ask me the one single word answer, it is bliss. I experience bliss every time something happens like this. When I see a child going home, for me it's bliss. When I see a handicapped child walking because I have helped her, for me it's bliss. When I see a child picking up picking up something which is strawberry, for example, which he has never seen in a lifetime, it's bliss for me. So these are little instances which happen. I remember an instance when I used to go to this adoption home, and there was this girl. She was completely physically disfigured. She used to sit and crawl on this thing. But the minute I went there, because I used to take them all to a park, she would jump, sit and jump, and she said, "माझी गाडी आली." In Marathi, it means my car has come. Come on, let's all go now. So all of them would just jump into the car. They would take the childcare worker, and we would go to a park nearby. So those are little instances that give you so much of satisfaction that is unimaginable. And at this stage, I think that's what keeps me going.
Beautiful. Vidya?
Okay. The reason why I started this movement, the sole reason is my daughter. Okay, her journey from an abandoned child, and what has happened with her in the past, and when I got to know about it, it actually shattered us as parents. And when we completed the adoption, I myself made a commitment to myself that probably this is probably one of the reasons I don't probably I should take it up, because not many people are into it, or not many people advocating for that cause. So I started off with a small a change in terms of having a signage movement, and where I started a petition online, which got kind of attention. And Kara actually accepted that they should be doing it and implementing that at all the childcare institutions. So, but during that process, I started getting some of the feedback saying that there are several other problems within that probably, and then I thought probably whatever I've learned over the last 15 20 years of working, let us put that learning into this space and try to improve the system directly, rather than just talking about it always. So that's the whole process. The journey started taking inspiration from my daughter, and then I started getting feedback from people which tried for me to get into this space.
Bhartiji and Vidya, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Ashraf. Bye. And we'll meet again.
Thank you, Ashraf. Thank you for inviting me on your podcast, All Indians Matter. I truly believe that this podcast would reach out to as many people as it can, and probably this would help improve the situation of adoption, and look at people started looking at adoption as a family planning alternative. I hope that really works well from this, and I wish you a good luck with All Indians Matter.
Thank you all for listening. Please visit allindiansmatter.in, that's ALLINDIANSMATTER.in, for more columns and audio podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter At Ashraf Engineer, that's ASHRAFENGINEER, and All Indians Count, that's ALLINDIANSCOUNT. Search for the All Indians Matter page on Facebook. On Instagram, the handle is All Indians Matter. Email me at editor@allindiansmatter.in. Catch you again soon.